Hello and welcome to World News. I'm Anna Kalczynska. You're watching TVP World. The United States and Ukraine have signed a deal that will give Washington access to Ukrainian mineral resources and set up a joint fund to invest in reconstruction of the war-torn country. The U.S. side has been working towards the agreement since Donald Trump returned to the White House in January. The deal signed late Wednesday does not automatically hand Washington a share of Ukraine's mineral wealth or any of its gas infrastructure. It provides for the creation of a joint U.S.-Ukrainian fund for reconstruction, which will receive 50% of profits and royalties accruing to Ukrainian state from new natural resources permits in Ukraine. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described the agreement as historic.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
A Russian drone strike in a Ukrainian port of Odesa has killed 2 people and injured at least 5 others. Local media report that the Russian strike overnight between Wednesday and Thursday caused a series of fires across the city. The regional governor said several residential high-rise blocks, homes and schools were also damaged by the flames. Media report that air alerts were sounded in 11 regions of Ukraine overnight. The EU is preparing for an eventuality where Donald Trump administration abandons Ukraine peace talks in favor of a rapprochement with Russia, said the bloc's top diplomat Kaja Kallas in a recent interview with the Financial Times. The EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy was quoted by the Financial Times saying, "We see signs that they are contemplating whether they should leave Ukraine and not try to get a deal with the Russians because it's hard," referring to Washington. These comments follow a wave of statements and efforts from the White House to normalize relations between the U.S. and Moscow. The so-called EU Plan B includes maintaining economic pressure on Russia no matter which way negotiations go. Kallas also added that talks were ongoing with Washington and other international partners to ensure the Western sanctions regime is kept in place. Ukraine is ready for any format or conversation with Russia, but the strikes need to stop, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in his recent evening address to the nation. Such a message was to be conveyed during Zelenskyy's meeting with a delegation from Luxembourg.
Today, there was a lot of technical work with our partners, primarily diplomatic work. We are preparing meetings and negotiations that will take place soon. Security is the main priority. I spoke today with ministers, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defense of Luxembourg, who were our guests. First and foremost, we discussed our cooperation in Europe and support. I want to thank them for supporting Ukraine. Of course, we talked about diplomacy, about the need for a complete ceasefire, unconditional and for a sufficient period, at least 30 days. Strikes must stop, killings must stop, and after that, solutions must be sought in negotiations. We are ready for any format of conversation. Russia must stop the strikes and the war.
On Thursday, Poland will be marking the 21st anniversary of its accession to European Union, which took place exactly on May 1st, 2004. Warsaw will host a series of events to mark this occasion, including a military display, marching bands, and a mass picnic. More than 77% of Poles voted in a 2003 referendum in favor of joining the EU. The past 2 decades have been significant in the country's political, economic, and social development. Despite the recession, pandemic, and the war in Ukraine, Poland has become a more prosperous country. According to the statistic data platform, Poland's GDP per capita is estimated to be 40% higher than if Poland had not joined the community. European countries have until midnight Wednesday to apply to trigger an EU mechanism allowing for more defense spending. So far, roughly half a dozen countries have signed up, a part of Readiness 2030 plan. So what happened next? Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins has the timeline from Brussels.
Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Germany and Greece have all applied at the European Commission to trigger their national escape clause. This would free up roughly billions of euros in defence spending as part of the European Commission's big push to get all of the 27 EU member states battle ready for whatever threat comes their way by the end of the decade. Now, hypothetically, if all of those 27 EU member states trigger the national escape clause, it would free up 650 billion euros that those member states could tap into. However, they would have to fund from their own coffers. Now, what happens next? The European Commission will take the next month to assess these applications and hand down its overall report card at the beginning of June. Then it will go to a European Council where the 27 European countries will offer their final seal of approval to determine whether those member states, such as Poland, can forge ahead with their national escape clause plan to spend more on defence without falling foul of the EU's strict financial rules, which Poland has suffered from in the past, being targeted with an excessive deficit procedure by spending more than 3% of its GDP on a range of projects. But the most important thing to look out for in this timeline is that it is meant to come into effect roughly coinciding with that Hague NATO Summer Summit scheduled for the 24th and 25th of June. We're expecting NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to announce that 2% funding benchmark as part of the military alliance to be scaled up. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
Polish-American cooperation, including in the field of defense, is currently at its highest level ever, says Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The Prime Minister made the statement while commenting on the decision of the U.S. Congress to approve the sale of $1.3 billion worth of air-to-air missiles to Poland. Tusk went on to stress the importance of air defense, pointing out that Europe is lacking in his area.
In terms of air defense, defense against missiles is one of the greatest weaknesses across Europe. The war in Ukraine continues to showcase the importance of air defense. The Iran-Israel conflict has already shown several times how important and effective DOM is. Therefore, it goes without saying one needn't be a defense specialist to understand that 400 cutting-edge rockets defending the Polish skies is a crucial achievement. Polish-American cooperation, including in the field of defense, is currently at its highest level ever. The US Congress's approval of the sale of air-to-air missiles to Poland is not just a technicality that will allow the deal to move forward, but also a testament to the strength of the Polish-American alliance, regardless of who wins the elections in either country.
Poland and France have agreed to sign a long-awaited friendship treaty after months of negotiations. Our correspondent Alex Cadier has the latest from Brussels.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron will host Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in the city of Nancy on the 9th of May to sign what is being called a friendship treaty, really strengthening the bonds between Poland and France, long-standing historical bonds, but really renewing a treaty that was signed in the 1990s between the two countries. A real sign, of course, of the growing importance of Poland's place within the European defence apparatus. This friendship treaty will focus in large part on bringing the two countries closer together when it comes to defence issues. So clearly an important step. President Macron announcing this just in the last day or so, expressing a desire from France to build stronger relationships with Poland as quickly as possible. And even the choice of the city of Nancy is no coincidence. It was the final residence in the 18th century of the Polish king Stanislas Leszczyński. Clearly a historic symbol there of that long-standing relationship between France and Poland. We've heard French ministers saying that in fact the relationship with Poland that France has should be the same as close allies like neighbouring countries of Spain, Germany and others. Clearly a step forward in the French-Polish relationship. In Brussels, Alex Cadier for TVP World.
Emmanuel Macron welcomed Germany's outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz to the Élysée Palace on Wednesday. This was most likely Scholz's last meeting with the French president as German Chancellor. Friedrich Merz from the Christian Democratic Union Party is expected to take over the position on May 6th. Olaf Scholz's Social Democratic Party eventually backed the proposed coalition with the Christian Democratic Union and Christian Social Union Alliance. The agreement opens the way for the formation of a new government 2 months after snap elections were held back in February. In this new government, the Social Democrats will be represented by Lars Klingbeil, who will hold the post of Vice Chancellor and Finance Minister. And the Germany's new government will introduce tougher border controls and limit asylum applications starting on May 6th. CDU's Thorsten Frey, the future Chancellery Minister, told the German newspaper Funke Mediengruppe that anyone attempting to enter Germany illegally must expect to be stopped at the border starting with May 6th. The new measure will include intensified identity checks at German borders and the immediate rejection of individuals attempting to enter the country illegally. Tighter border policy will also include turning migrants away at the border, a practice known as refoulement. A central argument of this new government is that asylum seekers should apply for protection in the first EU country they enter, which, according to Frey, is almost never Germany. They are looking at leading Europe in the next couple of years in the rearming process and reindustrialization, said Marcin Burzański, director of the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiations at Civitas University, while discussing Germany's push to raise funds and debt limits. During the recent interview with TVP World, Burzański also touched on the rearming process across the entire EU.
And now we are seeing the new German government being aggressively pushing forward to raise those additional funds, to raise the debt limits, which is a sign that they are looking at leading Europe in the next couple of years in the rearming process and reindustrialization and investing in the European industrial capacities. So these are very, very important changes, and we have to understand also that this is a long-term investment. So this is, I think, it'll take a lot of time before we see the industry reaching levels like we would in the US. And it is also very important to do it smartly so that the money is not just invested in the biggest players, but come evenly across EU countries. This is also an important element raised by, for instance, smaller countries to make sure that that there's a smart investment also when it comes to technology, when it comes to new jobs that can be spread across the EU. But without doubt, this is really an unprecedented level of compromise among EU member states.
And that's all we've prepared for you in this edition of World News, but please stay tuned to TVP World for more features and more to come. Thank you for watching.